Hello! I was sitting there in the office on a nice summer's day, looking at people complaining that they had to wear ties, and I was wondering, as I sat there in my thick wool tweeds, why they had to wear such ridiculous fashions. Well, I looked into this, and there are various stories as to why ties came about and why they're worn, and they appear to have evolved from the cravat, as I suspected, and to be worn to cover the buttons of a shirt that would previously in history have been covered by a waistcoat or waistcoat. Some anthropologists would argue that the tie directs a viewer's attention downwards to the wearer's genitals, hence the arrow-like shape. While some men like them as their men's chance to have a little colour, apparently, with dark suits and white shirts. I personally rarely wear a tie, but do wear variously coloured waistcoats and jackets, often in various tweed colours, with a pocket square to contrast or match the waistcoat. You don't need a tie to be colourful. And wearing a tie was considered to confer respectability. As Oscar Wilde said, with an evening coat and a white tie, anybody, even a stockbroker, can gain a reputation for being civilised. Well, one suggestion is that the tie was an invention of the Victorians. Supposedly it was to protect your shirt from the dirt going about every day. However, further back in history, only two groups of people had anything round their necks: the slaves and the hanged. And if you'd said to a Roman, "Here, put this around your throat," he'd have been highly insulted. Well, they probably wouldn't have understood you. Some say that the danger posed by a tie was part of its appeal. When a factory worker joined the management class, he could wear his cravat long, an indication that he no longer worked with machinery and could dangle with his betters. Linda Ellerby, a US journalist, is quoted as saying, "If men can run the world, why can't they stop wearing neckties? How intelligent is it to start the day by tying a noose around your neck?" Well, another claim to the tie and cravat's origins lie in Croatia. It is said that in 1635 a large number of Croatian mercenaries went to Paris to support King Louis XIII. Fashionable Parisians were rather taken by the trendy coloured scarves that the Croatians wore around their necks. They all started wearing neck scarves à la cravate, which led to the birth of the cravat. Some sort of tie, though, goes back even further. The terracotta army soldiers each wore a wrapped neck cloth, the earliest known predecessor of the modern tie. It seems, though, to have been a bit of a one-off, as they're the only known Chinese wearers of the neckcloth of the period. No other military or civilians around that time appeared to wear it. In 1815, the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, who typically wore black, wore a white cravat during the Battle of Waterloo to honour the Duke of Wellington, who favoured that colour during battle, and they admired each other. It was also around that time that people began to refer to cravat as a tie for the first time, of course referring to the fact that cravats were tied around the neck. As a side note, Napoleon came from Corsica. Can I tell you what someone from there is called? Corsican. By the 1920s, the tie was to evolve even more drastically when Jesse Langsdorff, a New York tie maker, cut the fabric at a 45-degree angle using a three-piece sort of construction. The gist of this being that it allowed the tie, when tied in standard knots, to hang evenly without twisting and gave us the modern look. Since then, over the years, the width of the ties expanded and shrunk, the length's grown and shortened, but despite those changes, the style remains essentially the same. The modern tie is even mostly manufactured in the same basic way. Assisting the tie's survival has been its ability to adapt. Even if you wanted to be a rebel, there was still a tie for you. Teddy boys in the 1950s wore bootlace ties, and new wave youths showed their angst in the 1970s with thin ties, rebelling against the wide kipper ties of the time. Well, the doctor's BMA has advised doctors to remove their ties in a bid to stop the spread of bugs such as MRSA. No doubt thousands of reluctant tie wearers are looking on jealously, wishing they too had just such a medical excuse for not having to wear a tie every day of the working week. This reminds me, yesterday I accidentally swallowed some food colouring. The doctor says I'm okay, but I feel like I've died a little inside. There's also the story of a man who goes into a restaurant, his shirt open at the collar, and is stopped by a doorman who tells him he must wear a tie to get in. Well, the man goes back out to his car and looks around for a tie and discovers he doesn't have one. He sees, though, a set of jumper cables in the boot of his car. In desperation, he ties these around his neck, manages to fashion a fairly acceptable looking knot, and lets the ends of the jumper cables dangle free. He goes back to the restaurant, and the doorman sees the jumper cables and carefully looks him over for a few seconds and says, "Well, okay, I guess you can come in. Just don't try to start anything." Goodbye.